If you've ever stayed in a relationship that was quietly destroying you, this episode is for you. And if no one's ever told you this in a way that actually landed, let me be the one to say, you didn't imagine it and you didn't chase it. Hey, NeuroSpicy fam. Welcome back to the NeuroSpicy MomPod. I'm your host, Austin Marie, and today's episode goes deep into the sticky, shamey, nervous system wrecking intersection of neurodivergence and toxic relationships, including but not limited to covert narcissistic ones. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on why so many neurospicy folks end up stuck in relationships that slowly hollow us out, and why it's not just emotional, it's biological. So grab your emotional support beverage and let's dive in. Let's start with the basics. What makes a neurodivergent brain more vulnerable to toxic relationships in the first place? First up, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD. If you've ever spiraled because someone took a little too long to text back, or if a small critique made your entire stomach drop, this one's for you. RSD is that gut punch moment when someone pulls back even slightly and your whole nervous system spirals like it's code red. It's not you being too sensitive. It's your brain sounding a fire alarm. And if you grew up being misunderstood, punished for crying, or constantly feeling like a burden, your nervous system is primed to treat even minor disconnection as danger. Brain imaging studies show that for folks with ADHD or autism, social rejection lights up the same brain regions as physical pain, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex and insula. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which is supposed to regulate those emotions, often struggles to keep up. Then we add in attachment wounds. Many neurodivergent people grew up being misunderstood, punished for who they are, or emotionally neglected, leading to anxious, fearful, or disorganized attachment styles. This makes us much more likely to tolerate chaos or unpredictability in relationships because it feels familiar. And let's not forget executive dysfunction. Leaving a toxic relationship isn't just an emotional choice. It's a task. And for neurodivergent folks, initiating complex tasks under stress is often impossible. It's not that you didn't want to leave. It's that your brain went full emergency mode and hit the freeze button. That's not weakness. That's wiring. And finally, interoception, the ability to read internal signals. Many of us miss or override our body's no. We were trained to mistrust it. That disconnect from your gut, that's not a character flaw. It's a nervous system adaptation. So when people ask, why didn't you just leave? The answer is your entire nervous system was wired to stay. Now, let's talk about the other side of the trauma bond, the covert narcissist. These aren't the loud, flashy villains from TV. They're charming, quiet, often thoughtful at first. They mirror your values. They make you feel seen. And if you're neurodivergent, especially if you spent a lifetime feeling misunderstood, that kind of validation feels like oxygen. Love bombing, future faking, subtle insults masking as care. They say things like, you're just sensitive, and because we are deeply sensitive, we believe it's our fault. Neurodivergent traits get exploited in quiet, insidious ways. We tend to process things quite literally, which means we miss tone or subtext. Our deep empathy makes us more likely to explain away harmful behavior if we can understand where it's coming from. And because we've been told we're too much our whole lives, we're primed to believe that if something feels off, it must be our fault. And here's the part that stings. At first, we're the manic pixie dream girl. We're quirky, refreshing, different. Our tangents are endearing. Our sensory quirks are cute. Until they're not. Until we need the lights turned off, or can't handle the restaurant noise, or fall apart over tags in our shirts. Then suddenly we're too much. Let me give you a glimpse from my own past. I was told over and over again that I wasn't the kind of girl he'd normally date. That if it weren't for how much he loved me, he wouldn't be with someone like me at all. And he said it like it was a compliment. He used my PCOS, my PMDD, my mental health history as reasons as to why he was a saint for staying. And somehow, I still felt lucky to be the chosen one. And that's what covert narcissism does. It makes you doubt your instincts while clinging to a person who's been slowly destroying your self-worth. Now let's talk about what all of this does to your body. Because trauma doesn't just live in your mind, it lives in your cells. Chronic emotional trauma dysregulates your HPA axis, the system that controls your stress hormones. When this system is stuck in overdrive, cortisol stays elevated, which leads to weight gain, sleep disruption, inflammation, and exhaustion. At the same time, oxytocin, the bonding hormone, gets hijacked. You end up feeling connected to someone who's hurting you, and your brain confuses it for safety. Over time, this hormonal chaos can result in estrogen dominance, progesterone depletion, and a worsening of conditions like PMDD, PCOS, and migraines. Your body's like, we're still not safe. Cool, I'll just stay inflamed forever. Cue the mystery rashes, the migraines, the gut stuff that doctors say is just stress-related and then offer zero help for. This kind of chronic dysregulation is how we end up with a cascade of long-term health issues like fibromyalgia, IBS, autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, intensified ADHD symptoms, and mood instability that doesn't respond to typical interventions. It's not all in your head, it's all over your nervous system. So how do we heal? Not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly, consistently, and with compassion. Start with nervous system regulation in the smallest, gentlest ways. Try running cold water over your wrist to bring you back into your body, or take long, slow exhales to signal safety to your nervous system. Wrap yourself in weighted blankets if it feels comforting, or let yourself rock or hum. Movements that shift your body out of shutdown and into a sense of connection. These aren't just feel-good tips. They're practical body-based tools supported by polyvagal theory, which teaches us that we can help access healing by helping our nervous system feel safe again. Next, practice interoceptive awareness. This means tuning in, not to just what your brain is saying, but to what your body has been trying to say all along. Maybe your chest tightens when someone gets too close, or your jaw locks up in the middle of a tense conversation. Maybe your shoulders inch up every time a certain tone is used, or you suddenly feel foggy and disconnected without knowing why. For me, it's a flash of intense emotion that lands square in my chest and makes it feel like my heart might explode. And eventually I do. And while that release often comes out for me as a yell, something I've carried a lot of shame about, it's also been a signal that my body couldn't hold it in any longer. It's a clue, not a character flaw. And here's what I've noticed. When I'm in a space that feels genuinely safe, like now, living alone, where my environment isn't constantly pushing me to the edge, I don't yell. I don't have to. Safety doesn't just soften your nervous system, it rewires how your entire body responds. That's because your nervous system isn't wired for logic, it's wired for survival. When you're in constant threat mode, even invisible threats like judgment or invalidation can tip you into fight or flight. But when you live in an environment that feels safe consistently, you stop bracing. You start processing. You start responding instead of reacting. These aren't random quirks. They're cues. They're your body waving red flags. Introception is about rebuilding that trust between you and the message your body's been sending this whole time. It takes time, and at first it might feel like learning a second language, but your body remembers. And when you start listening, you get to stop overriding yourself. And finally, reframe the story. You weren't too much. You were deeply attuned. You weren't weak. You were surviving. And you weren't chosen because you were broken. You were targeted because you're radiant, loyal, and emotionally intelligent. And that makes you powerful. Here's the thing. Narcissists and other manipulative people often intentionally seek out individuals who embody the very traits they lack: empathy, vulnerability, emotional intelligence, creativity, and the ability to love deeply. These aren't weaknesses. These are assets. And because they can't generate those things on their own, they gravitate towards people who can. You weren't picked because you were naive or broken. You were picked because your light was noticeable and they wanted to stand in its glow. That doesn't make you foolish. It makes you valuable. It makes you human. This isn't just emotional validation. It's neurological truth. When you live in prolonged states of dysregulation, your brain adapts by prioritizing survival over reflection. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, boundaries, and decision-making, goes offline. That's why these stories get embedded so deeply. When you reframe, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're creating new neural pathways. And every time you choose to speak gently to yourself, or remember that your sensitivity was wisdom, not weakness, you're laying down the architecture of a safer, more grounded you. And that doesn't make you broken. That makes you survivor material. So what do you do with all of this? First, give yourself permission to pause, to breathe, to let the truth settle in your bones. Awareness is the first disruption to the cycle. Then you start gently rebuilding, maybe with boundaries, maybe with body work, maybe just by saying no when everything in you says to people please. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to believe that healing is possible and that you're worthy of it. If you're currently in a relationship that makes you question your reality, where you're always doubting yourself or wondering if you're the problem, I need you to start documenting. Seriously, use a notebook, an email to yourself, a voice note, because trauma brain is real. It affects your memory, your sense of time, your ability to trust your own timeline. Documentation becomes your receipt of truth when everything else feels slippery. Trauma brain isn't about weakness. It's about your brain prioritizing survival over clarity. When you're constantly bracing for the next shutdown, your memory stops filing things in sequence. You forget the details. You question if things were that bad. And that's by design. Your brain's trying to protect you. But healing begins when we bring things into the light. If you're feeling unsafe or unsure, there are resources available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-SAFE, And you can also text START to 88788. You are not alone. You deserve safety, clarity, and peace. And if you're still listening, here's why this matters to me. I'm a neurodivergent single mom who left a covertly abusive relationship. I'm starting over. I'm rewriting my brain while raising 2 kids with very little support and no safety net and a whole lot of fight in my heart. This podcast, this is part of my plan for freedom. My goal is to build something bigger than me, Healing Hearts Homestead, a sanctuary for women and children to land when they need to rebuild. A place rooted in nervous system care, sensory awareness, community, and safety. Your support, your listen, your share, your subscription, it helps me build that future, one step at a time. Healing starts when we stop abandoning ourselves, and today, just by listening to this, you've already taken a step back home. If this episode stirred something in you, I just want to say you are not alone. Your softness isn't a flaw. Your loyalty isn't a mistake, and you are not too much. If you want to support this podcast and help this healing mama build a life after abuse, please consider subscribing to my Patreon for just $5 a month. That support goes directly towards my financial freedom in creating more resources like this one. And hey, I've been thinking about starting each episode with a quick little off-script life update, kind of like a cozy check-in with our NeuroSpicy squad. Let me know if that's something you'd want. You can leave a comment, DM me, or hop on our Patreon community board. If this episode resonated, please send it to someone you love. Let's normalize these kinds of conversations. Let's name what hurts us and name what heals us. Until next time, stay safe, stay soft, and stay spicy. Ta-ta!